Evening, sir, and welcome to Business Today.
Thank you. Good evening, Denver.
Indeed, just to get us started, Mr. Lebon, can you briefly just give us an outlook or an outline of the role of the RFIN within the financial sector and why this role becomes so important with the discussions around FIMA?
Yeah, so the Retirement Funds Institute of Namibia is a collective of all the retirement funds in Namibia. We represent the retirement funds, and our role is to support a well-governed, professional and sustainable retirement funds sector that protects members. Then what we do is we bring together the principal officers, trustees, administrators, and we strengthen governance. We build capacity, and we engage constructively in regulatory issues. So this we could see also from our engagement now recently with NAMFISA. We, as the Retirement Funds Institute, have also a slot, and NAMFISA has industry meetings, and as the industry body, we have also slot at that industry meetings, which is 3 to 4 times in a year. But now specifically about FIMA, that was quite an important engagement with NAMFISA, and there we played a quite critical role.
All right, so maybe just get into detail a little bit as to what prompted the RFIN to take the lead on these nationwide engagements, particularly around FIMA.
So what there were some, FIMA is quite a comprehensive piece of legislation. It governs the non-banking financial sector, and one of the sectors is the retirement funds. You have other industries as well. Under the FIMA, we are Chapter 5, and so what it did, it changed a few things compared to the Pension Funds Act. The Pension Funds Act is of 1956, which is obviously quite old, right. And things have evolved. Right. So legislation also needs to evolve. But then there were some changes, and there were some questions from the industry to the regulator in terms of practical implementation as well as legal standing. We must also understand that the Pension Fund Act doesn't stand alone. There is another act, is the Income Tax Act. The two of them talk together. Right. And there were some conflicts between the FIMA and the Income Tax Act, one of the items, and that was also discussed at that meeting. And so we wanted to engage with NAMFISA in order to make sure that we understand how to implement FIMA, what is the consequences, and that they also understand the challenges that we have as pension funds, retirement funds.
So then you've talked about that engagement role, that networking role that the organization plays. So just how exactly do you go about helping retirement fund members and the broader public to understand what this law means for them in practical terms?
So firstly is that engagement with the regulator. I think it's quite important that we do that on a regular basis. And our engagement on 23rd of March was quite changing in how we approached between them and us, and very positive engagement. And we ironed out a lot of items that we had some challenges about. Now with FIMA become operational, and that will be around the corner. Right. We don't have the exact date, but it's still in 2026. It's important that pension fund trustees, board of trustees, and principal officer up their skills, because governance is a major point. Risk-based supervision is major. And with that, what we then do is we've engaged service providers to assist trustees, principal officer, to equip themselves and to learn and upskill for that role under FIMA.
All right. So from these engagements that you've had, maybe what are some of the most common concerns that you've had, or even some of the most common misconceptions that have popped up?
Yeah, so I think we all know about the preservation discussions that we had at least a year ago, where there's a regulation that was issued and they want members, if they resign, not to take all their money, which I understand. There's a place for that. But it's about how much 75% they said must stay behind and 25% you can take. Right. So that one was then discussed, and there was a technical committee established, and that was put on hold. So FIMA is also being implemented without that. The other one major contentious issue is, as I mentioned before, there's the Income Tax Act that regulates how, if you retire or resign, how you are taxed on these benefits. And under the FIMA, it means when you retire, you must take 100% of your benefit, you must buy an annuity. Right. And that is in conflict to the Income Tax Act. And so that we had to also iron out. And in the meeting, for instance, FIMA has also, NAMFISA has advised us that this specific clause in FIMA will not be implemented, because these two legislations need to talk to each other. And so that's still something that needs to...
So there might be another amendment
yeah, so there will be amendments, and that is for sure. The other item was very much about payments of death benefits, very much focus on beneficiary nomination form, and then what the law also talks about is paying a advance as such, and that we questions in how much who must be paid, and it was ironed out. It's important that they will amend that. The vulnerable, it's your children. That needs to be, and the spouses, and most probably also. So that's two of the items. Obviously, preservation was mentioned again, but we know that is parked for a while.
Like you say, quite a vast piece of legislation. Mr. Lebon, we'll just go to a break, quick fast. We are in conversation with the chairperson of the Retirement Funds Institute of Namibia, Mr. Klaus Lebon, discussing the FIMA Act that is set to go into effect pretty soon. That's Business Today, coming up right next. Welcome back. We're still in discussion here with the chairperson of the Retirement Funds Institute of Namibia, Mr. Klaus Lebon, here on Business Today. Mr. Lebon, when we left, we were talking about some of the concerns that stakeholders had. Maybe to carry on the conversation, what are the key provisions within FIMA that stakeholders should be paying closest attention to right now?
Yeah, so very briefly, the provisions that strengthen governance, accountability, and regulatory oversight by NAMFISA. So what it happens is Board of Trustees and also the Principal Office role very much is elevated. Right. The Principal Officer also becomes ex officio member of the Board of Trustees, whilst at the current is just the Principal Officer's Board of Trustees takes every decision. And what they also then need to do is demonstrate to the member how and they're taking decisions on what basis, and very, very critical is communication to members. What we, for instance, need to do after board meetings, we need to give a report to the members and say to them what was discussed, what decisions were taken. Okay. So there's a much more...
Effort at transparency there.
Very much transparency. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, as I also previously mentioned, in terms of the FIMA, the risk-based supervision, and that comes in. So risk assessment for a fund becomes very important. All right. And so in the regulatory environment, NAMFISA specifically is going to look at the risks, look at your risk register as a fund, and identify possible areas that needs to be improved on. So these are the very important items. A lot of technical stuff, right. But that is in brief.
You touched on the transparency item, but maybe just from an industry perspective, how is FIMA expected then to improve governance and transparency across financial institutions? I think we just went past that, but maybe just take us a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, what's very important is the independence of the Board of Trustees, and especially you find it also, you have these umbrella funds also that were established by insurers or administrators, and so the independence training of trustees, principal officers, upskilling, they need to be fit and proper. Okay. If you're not fit and proper, you are not. If you have, they want to make sure there's no criminal record or whatever. Uh-huh. Then the other very important is training. They need to regularly do training, go through training courses. One thing that NAMFISA will roll out is a trustee toolkit. And you can only become a trustee if you have completed a trustee toolkit. And so there we also want to, as I mentioned before, fill that gap in terms of training. And then, as mentioned, also transparency and reporting to members on a regular basis. What happens on board level, what decisions are taken, how does it impact them. What we also need to do is going forward is giving members an indication of what they could more or less expect when they retire with their investments, so that they can take informed decision how do they need to do their financial planning.
All right. Let's hone in on that segment. Retirement fund members, on a practical level, what changes can they actually expect to notice once that act becomes law?
As a much stronger governance from Board of Trustees, clearer communication, and more disciplined decision making within the funds. Board of Trustees are then held to a much higher standard of accountability. Right. We can't just wash it away and think it goes away. Right. We have a constituency to which we are accountable.
All right.
And so that standard is much higher than what we have currently.
All right. I want to take you back to what you mentioned as well. One of the most debated aspects of FIMA, obviously, is pension preservation.
Yeah.
Critics argue it could limit access to retirement savings. They also say that it could place financial pressure on workers. How often does this concern come up in your engagements, and how do you respond to that?
Well, a lot.
The most.
I think that was the most contentious issue that was brought up. But we need to understand that with legislation changing, things will change.
Right.
And we need to understand where government is heading also in terms of old age people to live a decent life on old age.
Right.
And that's the intention of preservation. People, unfortunately, and we know from history that 2/3 of members, when they resign out of a pension of the company and out of the pension fund, they take the money in cash,
Right.
and the money is then spent on luxuries and possibly paying debt if that's then staying there. And then when they get to retirement, there's not enough retirement. People need to retire comfortable, and that's the aim of preservation. In what form they will implement that is still to be seen, but preservation will come.
Right.
That is a given. Also, you've seen that in South Africa, they've instituted this two-pot system where people need 2/3 they need to keep in the fund, and 1/3 they can draw regularly from. So that's a possibility also. So they want to ensure that members, what they have saved for retirement is used for retirement.
Goes to retirement.
Yeah.
Maybe just to close us off, once FIMA is in force, what ongoing role will the RFIN play in supporting retirement funds and their members?
Yeah, I think RIFIN plays an important role because we are collective engagement with the regulator. There will be changes to the Act. NAMFISA can issue standards, and with the standards, they have to consult industry and training, upskilling Board of Trustees. So
It will be an ongoing thing.
It will be ongoing, and the Institute is there to assist the retirement fund, their officers, to achieve good compliance.